The recording is going to be put on the district's website under workshops. We have a workshop section that's listed under students and families. It probably will not be there until early next week, only because I'm going to be out of town for the next few days, and it takes me a little bit to actually upload it and do all the work to get it ready for there. So look for it next week. As well, the presentation tonight in both English and Spanish, the slides will also be up there. So you can access those if there's anything you missed or want to revisit. You are going to have plenty of time for questions at the end of the presentation. When you are looking at your screen, you should have a section that says Q&A, probably at the bottom, that icon. You'll be able to type in your questions there. Everybody can see your questions unless we then go in and block it or make it personal. So make sure that you understand that everybody can see whatever you're asking. If you can, please be careful not to put descriptors, children's names, schools. That would be very helpful. I don't want to release any personal information by accident. And if I'm not answering, if one of us is not answering the question right away, it's because we know it's either coming up in the program to be answered, or I'm holding it so that way everybody can benefit from the answer. So you don't need to repeat it. I know that it's there, and so do our other moderators. Because we're doing the question and answer format with writing, I'm asking you not to raise your hand. That requires me to stop and make you be able to speak, and it's just too hard to do during a program like this. So if I see a hand that's raised, I'm going to gently lower it for you and ask you not to do that. And besides that, I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We love seeing you coming in on our webinars and trying to get more information on how to, best help your kids, our students. We really see this as a partnership. So thank you. I'm going to go mute myself and turn it over to Erin and our team of amazing counselors.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Betsy and Yvonne. As we go through our presentation, that information will be on the bottom of the slide, so you will continue to have access to that. So welcome. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. As Jake said, I'm Erin Taggart. I'm the Director of Elementary Education. I have the fortune of working with the wonderful panelists that are here on our webinar this evening. They are going to introduce themselves, but before that, I want to introduce Mr. Calcano, who is the principal of Arroyo Elementary. And so he'll be here. And as we get to part of our presentation, he's helping answer questions just like the rest of us as well. So I am going to turn it over to Caitlin. Our elementary counselors are amazing, and hopefully you've had the fortune of working with them or seeing them on campuses. They do share campuses, so they have about one counselor for about 3 sites. And so you may have caught them on a day they were there. They tend to run all over the place, and we are fortunate to have each and every one of them. They're going to share with you some of that information about what they do and how these lessons are being presented at the school sites. Our goal is to provide you that communication with your students at home as well. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin.
Thank you, Erin. Well, welcome everyone. We just want to say thank you so much for being here and partnering with us in this conversation. So tonight we are going to be discussing elementary bullying prevention. What is bullying and how can we help your child and our children in our school sites? So we're going to start with introductions. I am Caitlin Bills. I am an elementary counselor at Crestview Township and White Oak. And I'm going to pass it over to my other elementary counselors.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fabiola Cano, and I'm an elementary counselor at Knowles, Mountain View, and Parkview Elementary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fernando Castro, and I'm the counselor at Madera, Santa Sue, and Wood Ranch.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Doyen, and I'm the counselor at Arroyo, Catherine, and Hollow Hills.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Rojas, and I'm the counselor at Big Springs, Garden Grove, and Sycamore Elementary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Sparks, and I am at Atherwood, Barrelwood, and Vista.
Hello, I am Heidi Vega, and I am a counselor at Arroyo, Barrelwood, Santa Sue, and Parkview.
Thank you. So now that we've introduced ourselves, we're going to go through the conversations that we're going to be having this evening. We are going to be discussing quite a few topics in regards to bullying prevention, and we're just going to take turns sharing. Each counselor is going to take some turns sharing information. But for our agenda this evening, we are going to be defining bullying and discussing bullying versus conflict, how they're different and how they look. We will also be discussing different types of bullying, the different forms of bullying that can happen. We also would like to make sure we are educating you on how you can support your child in becoming a supportive bystander, and then also ways to help at home. So we have a lot of discussion points on how you can talk to your child, things that you can do at home. And so we're going to jump right in.
All right, so welcome again, guys. Everyone that's here, thank you for being here. We're gonna talk about bullying. So what is it, right? Bullying is a big deal, and it is a word that gets jumbled up. And we're gonna take a closer look at what it is and what it isn't. So bullying, it's something that's unwanted. It's aggressive behavior among school-aged children that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. A person is continuously being mean to someone else on purpose. It doesn't stop when the behavior is refused or reported. It's unfair and it's one-sided. There's an imbalance of power and can be part of a harmful situation. Next slide, thank you. So that's a lot of information, and we understand that especially for our students that are sometimes in situations at school, during class, during recess, during lunch, for them to remember all that information. So we like to introduce this acronym because we love acronyms in education. So BOO, being mean, so the letter B, being mean, O, on purpose, and the last O, over and over again. So this helps students to recognize if another peer's behavior is bullying or if it's part of peer conflict, which we'll discuss in the following slide. So peer conflict, it's one or a two-time incident that might be an accident. It usually stops when a student speaks up or reports that behavior to a trusted adult at school. A trusted adult at school could be a yard supervisor, it could be a teacher, it could be the custodian, it could be the principal, it could be us, the counselors. It's a two-sided agreement. And usually when we explain that, if our student that's reporting a behavior is also engaging, going back and forth, we tell them, well, it's a two-sided disagreement, so it's not bullying. There's no power dynamic. It's usually amongst friends if they're having a disagreement. And it's also considered an important part of building peer relationships. So next, we're going to discuss the 4 different types of bullying. So Mrs. Doyen is going to present that information for you. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's 4 different types of bullying that when we teach students about what bullying is, we talk about these 4 different types. And when students understand what these 4 types are and when they learn about them, it helps them better be able to identify if it is bullying that is happening. So physical bullying, that's hurting someone's body or their belongings. So that can include any physical hurting of someone, so pushing, hitting, kicking, pinching. And in addition to physically hurting someone, it can also be taking their belongings, taking their lunch, going through their backpack, touching their physical belongings. And then verbal bullying is using words either out loud or written to purposely hurt someone's feelings. We're going to move on to the next slide and talk about the next 2 types. So social emotional bullying, this is one that sometimes people don't know is a type of bullying. Sometimes the students are surprised they've never heard of this before. And it can often be hard to identify if this is happening. So social emotional bullying is leaving someone out on purpose encouraging others to be mean to someone, or trying to hurt their reputation or relationship. So an example of this, it could be if someone is purposely leaving a certain group of students out during recess time, during a game, and it's happening over and over again, and they're not allowing a person or certain people to play with them. And then cyberbullying it happens online. So oftentimes most of the time this happens at home. And it can be either on a computer, on a phone. Sometimes it happens on video games, social media, anywhere that students can talk to each other online. And if it is happening, it's important that students first report it to their adult at home, because a lot of times this is happening at home. And then sometimes, even though it's not happening at school, it can cause conflicts at school. It can kind of carry over. So if that is the case, it's important that the school knows what's going on so we can help address it here at school.
So how can students help stop bullying? So here we introduce the 3 R's. The first is to recognize. So this is about having our students recognize if what's happening is really bullying, or is it a conflict, right? Is it something that they're able to solve amongst peers? If it is bullying, though, then we do highly encourage our students to report it immediately to a trusted adult, not to wait until a week or a month after something has happened, but to report it right away, because we can only help if we know that something is happening. Our last R that we cover is to refuse. So this is about having our students learn how to stand up for themselves and how to directly tell the other side to stop, or tell them how they're making them feel. Sometimes we practice I statements with our students, like saying something like, I feel sad when you make fun of me. Can you please stop? So it's not about being mean or aggressive, but really about helping them learn how to be assertive and communicate what they need. So these are the 3 R's that we cover with our students about how they can help stop bullying.
The next slide, we also educate our students on what it means to be a bystander. So a bystander in a bullying situation is someone who is aware of the bullying and is witnessing the bullying happening. And they might even be contributing to the bullying without knowing it. They might be adding commentary that's unnecessary. They might be adding oohs or ahs, or even giggling or laughing. So we talk about how that is going to add to the problem. And we teach students that they can be supportive bystanders. So they can, and also we also use the term upstander. So we kind of use those interchangeably. An upstander would help report the bullying. They might even feel courageous enough to stand up for someone that's being bullied and tell them that they are not okay with their actions or their words. And an upstander is respectful and kind to everyone. They're at school, including everyone, and being a role model student. Our next slide. We often use in our lessons different types of pictures that can depict certain situations with students, and we have discussions with them. So in case you're not seeing the slide show, this is a picture of a student that is hovering over a student, and it appears that they're bullying that student, and then there's a crowd of other students around, looking around and witnessing the bullying. So we talk about having empathy for a student that is being victimized by bully. So what might that student feel like? How do you feel as a student if someone's being mean to you and then there are other people around witnessing what's going on? And oftentimes students will say, well, that would make me feel really sad, or that would make me really embarrassed or ashamed or humiliated. And we discuss the importance of then being part of the solution and not adding to the problem. And we would like all of you to have more conversations like this with your children at home to be part of the solution.
Thanks, Alicia. Conversations like the one Alicia mentioned are pivotal to help prevent bullying from happening. So we recommend that as a family, you also discuss what respect means and how we show it at school, at home, and in the community. So what does it look like and sound like to be respectful? Like, what are the language, the words we're using, and then what are those actions? It's also important as parents to try your best to model respectful behavior at home, especially when you're having conflicts. We know this is really hard to do. So we encourage you to take a deep breath when feeling overwhelmed and taking a moment to pause before responding. In the bully prevention lessons that we do, we teach our students the difference between aggressive behavior, passive behavior, and assertive, responses to bullying. So if you have a hiccup, like we all do, if you haven't, you're going to have one. Take a moment to discuss that, how was your response that you had, and what you could have done differently next time. It also teaches children that we're all learning and can make mistakes here and there. So that's important. We also suggest addressing bullying behaviors that happen at home when they happen, so that they can better understand what behaviors are unexpected and how it's impacted a family member. It's hard to do this all day long because there's a lot of behaviors that come, up throughout the day, but just definitely address the behaviors that are one-sided and repetitive. We also suggest having consistent consequences so that when when the behavior happens, this can help change the behavior and prevent it from happening again. You can also talk about empathy, what it looks like and sounds like and feels like, and if they feel comfortable standing up, and if they feel safe standing up, being that upstander, like Alicia mentioned. Books like The Cool Bean or How Full Is My Bucket are also great ways of having these conversations. Movies and TV shows as well are great to kind of use to see, if the character used positive or negative ways of being a bystander, and if they're part of the solution or if they're making it worse. Also, role-playing assertiveness and is also helpful. So you can come up with different scenarios when you can, to see how they would respond, if they were getting bullied or if they're a bystander. So focus on the body language, facial expressions, the tone and volume of their voice. And kind of like Ms. Fabiola said, those I statements, so they can practice being assertive. And you can have the family take turns role playing and see, the different approaches, and give them some positive feedback of, how they responded. Also see what activities in the community or school are available to help build confidence and assertiveness. Also, individual and group counseling are available at school, and that could also help build some of these skills. Also, if they do share that something is happening at school and it sounds like bullying, be supportive and ask questions to gather more information. They might be scared or kind of passive to share. So just ask a question like, what's happening? When did it start? Where it's happening, and ask them if they've reported it at school. If they haven't reported it, definitely encourage them and ask if they have a trusted adult. It can be a teacher, a counselor, yard supervisor, principal, just anyone at school. And we know that this can be hard for some students. Being assertive might be new to them. It could feel scary too. So if they are not reporting, please let us know. Reach out to your child's teacher so he or she knows what's going on, can speak to, your child and address the issues. And they can also reach out to the principals. Like Ms. Doyen said, bullying sometimes happens outside of school, like cyberbullying, and it carries into the school day. Children might be fearful to come to school. So please, communicate with us and let us know if this is happening.
Thank you, Ms. Vega. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we are doing and how we're helping support our students with bullying prevention on our campuses. So there's a couple of ways that we are putting in some preventative measures so that we make sure that we can help students and we're not just being proactive instead of reactive. So one of the things that we're doing is we have morning meetings set up where teachers, basically a teacher-led check-in. So we know that when students feel good, they are ready to learn. But this is an opportunity for teachers to do kind of a check-in with their class, kind of a classroom temperature check, see if there's anything going on, anything that needs to be addressed before we start the learning for the day. During these morning meetings, they can talk about different character traits, ways to be kind, respectful, responsible. It's open for discussion, and it also helps build a really safe and supportive classroom community so that the peers know that they can rely on one another and that they're there to support one another. So it's just a good way for teachers to really kind of get the temperature of the class and then also build that camaraderie within the class. We also have our safety awareness and school rule assemblies, which usually happen in the middle of the year. And then I know a lot of schools also kind of do a refresher mid-year after winter break. And these are just school-wide assemblies to address not only how to be safe at school physically, but also how we can support one another. And again, talking about ways that we can be a upstander and ways that we can help our peers if we see somebody that's in need and not be part of the problem. It talks about the expectations for good behavior across the board, kindergarten all the way through. We have expectations about the way that students should be treated when they are on campus. And that it's really just about taking good care of our school and also those around us. We also offer classroom lessons. So every one of our elementary counselors will offer what we call Tier 1 classroom lessons, which means where teachers can sign up for classroom lessons, and we will come in and discuss a variety of things. Prior to our 4th grade bullying prevention, we really focus a lot on trying to just have the basics covered, how to be a good friend, how to show kindness, what it means to have good social skills, who your trusted adults are on campus. So we try and really build on age-appropriate character traits so that as they grow, we know that then we can, really start talking about the bullying as they get a little bit older, but they've got the basics, the foundation there. We also have our school counseling services, and that looks different for every student. Again, we have classroom presentations and assemblies that may hit every student. Sometimes kids need a check-in. They're struggling a little bit socially and or having something happen that's affecting their academics. So we can do one-time check-ins with students, weekly sessions. Some of us have the availability on our campuses to do lunch bunches where we can invite students in and have lunch with groups of their peers in a smaller group setting. We also have the opportunity to set up students for outside resources, referrals. So if a family felt like their student needed some additional support that we weren't able to provide in our short-term intervention, we do partner with outside agencies as well. And then lastly, we have our 4th grade bullying prevention lessons. So what those are is a 2-part series, about 30 minutes per session. And we start that with our 4th grade classes across the board. So teachers will sign up and we will come in, and some of that information that our counselors shared with you earlier in our presentation are the things that we cover during our 4th grade presentations. We wanted to also cover our school response to bullying. So I'm going to turn this over to our admin, and they can tell you a little bit about how we handle this and the way that the steps that the schools take.
All right, thank you. As Ms. Vega said, we do want to make sure that the school is notified. And even when there is a conflict, when we just have peers being mean to each other, or we have a falling out amongst friends, we want to help facilitate those. So your child's teacher is always our first step. And then from there, the teacher may report it to the principal, or whoever needs to be involved in terms of investigation. So when we have a situation in which there is a suspicion of bullying, then we want to make sure that we have investigated that. So that does include talking to people who are involved. So it will include talking to the person who is doing the alleged bullying or the victim of the bullying, as well as any witnesses. And that's really why we talk about the bystanders and upstanders, because we want to proactively have students not only intervening in terms of making their own choice that we're not going to participate, but we also want them to be an ally in helping in report, so that we are able to address the situation as quickly as possible and as soon as possible. As we go through the investigation and talking to all the parties involved, that then determines our next steps, whether there is a mediation, whether there are consequences, whatever those next steps might be. And we make sure that we are documenting so that if there were to be a pattern, then we do have that documentation for it. Obviously, in our communication, we want to notify those appropriate parties as well, also including home and school. Our home to school partnership is very valuable and important, and so we want everybody to be on the same page. We want to make sure that we share information. However, we can't share that confidential information about another student. We're happy to talk about your child and the things we are doing to support your child, but we can't talk about another person's child, just like we wouldn't talk about your child to another. And so those are part of the conversations. The school is there to help facilitate. We don't want this to be something where people meet at school and have a conflict in front of the school as they're discussing it. It's in our interest to make sure that we are addressing it because our schools are the ones that are going to help with the solutions. As you see, our counselors are doing a fabulous job of spreading this information, empowering our students with this information. So that we can really make sure that we're providing all the social emotional support that we can, and going through and helping our students to know who that safe, trusted adult is. We want each student to be able to recognize a person on their campus, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be their teacher. When our counselors meet with them or in their lessons, they're having them think about who is that trusted adult. It could be a campus supervisor, it could be someone in the office, it could be the principal. And we want them to have that safe person to be able to know that if anything, not even just this, in terms of bullying or conflict, but anything that they can report it and talk to their principal about. So we want you to be able to start with your child's teacher, to bring in the principal if that hasn't been addressed in terms of if you feel like it was still continuing, or if there was some other concern, and to bring them in as well. I'm going to ask Mr. Calcagno if there's other things you would like to add to that.
Thank you. I would also like to add that at times, sometimes the kids don't report it to us on campus and they come home and they talk to you. And I would implore you to reach out to your teacher or to the site principal to discuss that so we can look into it immediately. We take all these concerns seriously. It takes some time to pull it apart. Sometimes we will ask our counselors to come in and help us with trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And what we try to do in solving the issue is give them tools to move forward if things occur again or with a different group of friends. And even with the conflicts that happen, I'm friends with them today, I'm not friends with them tomorrow. We try to build those bridges for the kids to say, yeah, it's okay sometimes that you need a day off or some time away from somebody just to recover from what happened. And we try to work with everybody to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable on campus.
Thank you, Mr. Calcagno. I think I'm turning it back over to Ms. Sparks.
Yeah, so we want to just have a couple of resources for you as a family. First, we want to make sure that you know that there is a anonymous tip line that you can access. So you can find that on all of the different school websites. So you should be able to access that. This is also the link here. So again, this will be posted for you. So if you ever felt like you needed to report anything, again, it doesn't have to be just specific to bullying, but if there was something that you felt you needed to report and you wanted to do it anonymously, this is an opportunity for you. There is also a phone number available. And also we want you to make sure that you are aware that on the district website under parents, there is a parents' rights and responsibility handbook that is available. There's lots of information in there, but there is also a section on bullying. So we want to make sure that if you felt like you needed to address that is available to you as well, so that you can look that up and you know what your rights are as a parent in the district. But again, we always want to partner with our families, so feel like they can come to us with any problem and we will help them solve it. So just know that we're in this together, and we want to make sure that you know your rights, and you know that we are here to support you and your students through their time with Simi Unified. We also, Caitlin, there we go. So we're gonna, open it up to some questions, and I see that there's a couple in the chat here. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jake so she can help facilitate that.
Okay. And as we're putting questions in the chat, please know that everybody can see the questions, and please try not to put identifying information about the child or the school, because I don't want to violate a child's privacy. I also have somebody who is raising a hand. You may not have been here earlier tonight when I said, please don't raise a hand, but type your question in the Q&A, so that way everybody can see it and we can answer it for everybody. First question was, can you please give examples of the consequences at home for bullying? There's nothing else, so I'm not sure if that's bullying that was done to the child or the child is doing the bullying, but I'll leave that in your hands, counselors.
Okay, I'll go ahead and just start, and then if anybody wants to chime in, feel free. I think that is probably a pretty personal question as far as what you would consider an appropriate consequence at home. I do think that there's a couple things that maybe we could look at depending on if your child was doing the bullying, deciding whether or not, if it was cyberbullying and it was on an electronic, if that was something that maybe you felt like maybe they weren't available to, maybe they weren't responsible enough to have at that time. Also, we talk to kids when we have bullying situations or even conflict. They're sometimes called what we call, a natural consequence. And sometimes when students are in a bullying situation, it really fractures friendships and the trust that they feel between their peers. So sometimes those consequences are enough for students to see, hey, maybe that was not a good choice for me. If your student is the one being bullied, I think that there's different things, again, different supports maybe that we can supply at the school level, and also talk with parents individually about ways that we can help support. Counselors, if there's anything else that you wanted to add or jump in, feel free.
Thanks, Kelly. I also think when it comes to, if you're noticing that your student or your child has bullying behaviors, if that's what we're talking about, then I think that's a conversation to have, right? Asking those questions that we had on previous slides about what's happening, like how are you feeling? What's going on? So talking a little bit more with your child about how they're feeling and why this is happening, and using it as like a moment to discuss with them and learn more about them, and see if you can kind of, instead of having a consequence right away, talking about how they can learn from it, what they can do differently.
We had a quick question before that got answered, but I wanted to return to it. It was, what does SEL stand for? SEL stands for social emotional learning. And sometimes we forget, we use a lot of acronyms in education. So I want to make sure everybody was clear on what SEL is. There is a really good question in here. Why are bullies doing this in the first place? Why are some bullies targeting people?
I can answer that one. And we talk about that in the lessons, right? And sometimes it might be that they haven't developed the social skills needed. So sometimes that could be that they haven't had that practice. Other times it could be that it's learned behavior, and that's what they're doing. Other times it might be that they've never been reported and they think this is okay. This is how you treat people. They like having that power over other people. So that's when we talk about being a bystander and and reporting it to us. It's also important because then we get to have those conversations with those students. And sometimes in those counseling lessons too, it comes up where it's like sometimes those kids have just been used to being, you know, treated badly or maybe talked down to by a sibling or a cousin. And so, you know, they're thinking, well, this is how we're going to treat people. And we let them know. And if that's you, you know, you can also reach out to a counselor, because we want you to get used to being treated with respect, right? Not to be put down so often that now you think this is how you're going to treat people. So, so it's sometimes it might be that power dynamic. It might be a learned behavior, but for whatever reason that they're doing this, it's so important that we address it as soon as possible, so they realize and understand that this isn't something that we stand for. We are here to, you know, make sure that students feel safe and comfortable at school, because we know this is going to affect their learning too. I don't know if anyone wants to step in.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great, Ms. Vega. Thank you. It's important that we dissociate the person and the behavior, right? I like to tell our students that, you know, if you're on the receiving end of the bullying, right, it doesn't necessarily make that person bad. It's more of the behaviors, right? The choices that your peer may be making as far as the way they are treating you. And like Ms. Vega was saying, you know, we always tell our students, we want you guys to come to school, you know, to feel safe, to feel welcome. And it's important, again, and that's why I think it's important that we're having this discussion today, that it's reported, right? That students recognize, okay, is this bullying, or is this just my friends are roasting me, right? Kids, you know, nowadays they say they're roasting, or they're teasing each other. So recognizing, right, using those acronyms that we've been introducing in the classrooms, right? Okay, is it over and over again? Is it on purpose? You know, and then being assertive, right? Being assertive, and then just telling that person, that peer, to stop that behavior. A lot of times, you know, once it's addressed, it'll stop. And again, those are the conversations we have with our students. Look, if it's not stopping after 2 or 3 times that you're telling them to stop, you need to come to us, right? You need to report it to your teacher. You need to report it to a principal or to your counselor. No, I always tell my students, it's such a long day, and for you to be carrying that, you know, throughout the day and waiting to go home and tell mom and dad, we want to be able to help, you know, and get ahead of it before it starts to become an issue. So I think also, you know, explaining that a lot of the times when a bully is bullying someone, it, again, just like reiterating what Ms. Vega mentioned, is it's learned behavior. You know, they're being bullied at home, by parents, by family members, or by someone in their community, and it's, you know, it's an ongoing cycle. So it's important that we educate our students and how to recognize and how to stand up against it.
I have a situation that I'm going to paraphrase for Anonymous. Her child or his child was bullied by another student, and her child seemed to handle it, but she's concerned and still is thinking about reporting it. She said that the incident hasn't repeated itself since then. And I think, Mr. Castro, you touched on this a little bit, but she's wondering if she should still go ahead and report the contact.
I can go ahead and
No, go ahead.
I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to say, you know, it's always helpful to have that open communication. So, you know, it doesn't hurt to just let your child's teacher know what happened. And, you know, even if it has not happened again, they can kind of look out for it and make sure that they're just kind of watching and making sure that nothing like that does happen again. And you can always reach out to the school and, you know, talk to your school counselor, talk to your child's teacher if you have specific situations that you're kind of unsure about. But I think that open communication can always be helpful to have.
I would agree with that. I would make sure that you are letting the teacher know that she can monitor it. And if you have additional concerns, to reach out to the site administrator to put them on their radar also.
Teresa would like to know, what are the consequences for pantsing another student, and why is expulsion not a part of this? And I'm assuming pantsing is when a child pulls down the pants on another student. Okay.
And given not knowing all the circumstances, there's not a general statement for what's allowed or what isn't. You know, obviously our goal is to take care of all of our children. So in general, pantsing absolutely is not And how it was addressed, I don't know. I'm hopeful that it was reported, so that it was addressed, and that there were open lines of communication, and supports put in place for your child. We obviously are creating a safe and caring environment, and so anything like this would not be allowed and tolerated. As far as where the consequences go and what those consequences are, each of those fall into different categories or different unique circumstances. But our first step is always to, like we said, report it, but also then to investigate and address it. So without speaking to specifics, it's definitely a conversation to continue if you haven't with the school, just in terms of what is in place to support your child, if this is yours or a friend, to support the child, and look at next steps, and empowering them to make sure they feel like their school is a safe and caring environment.
Shanetta asked a really good question. She wanted to know what are some of the ways that you can teach your children to stand up for themselves, especially if they are super shy.
So something that we cover in our lessons when we do teach about this to students is practicing being assertive, but not aggressive when you're reporting. And we also really encourage them when we talk about bystanders to kind of 2 people reporting is better than 1. So if there is someone who is also a witness to the bullying, kind of pairing up and working together, and they kind of will feel more supported if they have a peer with them helping them. So if your child does have someone that was there that saw something happen, and they're able to go with them either to report or to stand up for themselves, that might help them become more comfortable standing up for themselves and reporting.
And we also talk about making sure that the student isn't continuing to go back to that situation, right? So we talk about being assertive, and then also we go, we tell them what we don't like about what they're doing, but we don't stick around or continue to go back to that situation, so that we continue a cycle of where whoever might be the aggressor in this situation is continuing to see that person and continuing to have those, conversations with that particular student. So, being assertive, walking away and reporting it. So we always want to make sure that the students know that they have options and they have choices. And like Ms. Doyen said, we always let them know, there's power in pairs, find a friend, find a buddy. And if you see that happening to somebody else, be that buddy. So kind of sticking together in those situations.
And I just wanted to add on to that, that I think if you have a child that is not sure what to say or is on the shyer side, role playing with them, practicing what they could say if something were to happen. We role play a lot in our bullying prevention lessons, but I also tell students, like, we practice fire drills, we practice things, so we know what to do if that ever were to happen. It might not happen, but if we practice the role playing and what we would say, they're more likely to feel comfortable saying it if that does happen. So I think role playing is a really good strategy to use with your child.
I have a couple of questions that are kind of the same. So I'm going to say the one and clear the 3. So forgive me, questioners, if I'm not saying your question exactly the same, but has to do with how do you go about catching a student who's in the middle of doing this bullying, especially if the student then kind of turns it around back on the child that is being bullied. If that's not clear, let me know.
I think it's important that we distinguish, is this a peer conflict? That's the main message here for our students. We want them to practice conflict resolution skills, right? It's important that they start to recognize, is this bullying? Is it repetitive? Is it on purpose, right? I think it's important that they start to ask themselves these questions. And again, like we just mentioned earlier, walking away from a situation, they have choices. And I think it's really important that they start to, practice these things and be be vigilant, right? Notice the different things that are happening around, the conversations that are happening around, right? The bystander effect of, okay, if a peer is being bullied, am I going to just, you know, sit there and let it happen, or am I going to you know, talk to my friend and help them out? Again, if it's repetitive, it's on purpose, it's being mean on purpose, you know, that's the main message here for our students, as far as, you know, them distinguishing between, you know, someone's having a bad day and they make, you know, they make a rude comment about my shirt. Or is it, you know, is it something, again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but, you know, we need to drive that message home. And parents, if you guys can have those conversations with your child at home, you know, is it repetitive? Who was there? Did you report it to your teacher? All these steps are going to help, not just the student, but the adults at the school too. You know, I always tell my students when we have these conversations is, if I don't know about it, you know, I can't help you. Or if your mom and dad don't know about it, they can't help you either. So just giving them that power of, you guys have a choice. You guys, you know, need to speak up against bullying.
And I just wanted to add too, like we tell students, a lot of times bullying happens when the teacher has their back to the students, you know, away from the adults. And so that's like what Mr. Castro is saying. We're trying to create an environment where as bystanders, we don't stand for this, right? We want to make sure that we support, you know, each other, that we're creating an environment where we all feel safe. So, you know, us going into those classrooms and presenting these lessons to those fourth graders is to teach them there's more of you than there is of us. And so we can together create a culture where we stand up for one another, and it's going to take time. But that's why sometimes those, you know, we can't make sure that we catch every single situation, because it happens, you know, when we're might not be there, have all eyes there. But our hope is that with these bullying prevention lessons, that we're able to create that culture with the conversations with you, with our staff, that we're able to make this change and a shift in the culture.
Aurora has asked, well, she's stating that the students are too small to understand and distinguish bullying. Have a response to that, maybe?
I'll just say, you know, when we do our class lessons, we really try to teach them what types of things they do need to report. And for the younger ones, that might look a little bit different. Our lessons look a little bit different for the younger elementary students, but we do talk about trusted adults with all grade levels that we present to. What adults do you feel like you can go to if you're having a hard time? And, you know, what behaviors are expected for school. So they are learning those expected versus unexpected behaviors. So they're starting to develop those skills to be able to identify. And if they are in the younger elementary grades, also just, you know, them talking to their teacher, and their teacher can help guide them in determining if it's something that they need to get involved in, or if it's a small conflict that they can solve on their own. So it's really just kind of practicing that with them, maybe talking to them about it at home and letting them know, you know, that's probably something that you should talk to your teacher about, or maybe helping them talk to their teacher to just practice them learning to advocate for themselves.
We also talk a little bit about tattling versus reporting, and how reporting is important, especially in bullying situations. We talk about what the difference is. You know, tattling would be something that, you know, somebody got something that you wanted, and so you're going to tell on them. Versus, you know, somebody is in a dangerous situation or could be hurt. Those are, you know, we help those kids distinguish between the two, so that, and that's something that happens in the lower grades, right? We do a lot of discussion about, you know, when you should come tell your teacher or your yard duty you need help, or when you could use your words and say, I didn't like that, or could you please stop? So we do a lot of role playing and modeling in the younger grades so that we can help support them. So when, you know, as they get older, they have the vocabulary and they have the skill set to be able to voice what it is that they need and what they, you know, when they want something to stop.
Cassandra has asked, there are a couple of questions in this post, that some of which we've answered, but what if the incidents are unprovoked and one-sided, also physical? How does a child stop something they don't even know is going to happen? In these cases, are the parents of the child understanding the severity of the behavior? And if it's happening to multiple students and the others aren't reporting, then how does it stop? So there's a lot in there, but maybe you guys can wrestle with that.
Well, I just wanna, I'm thinking that when something is getting physical or your child is coming home and they're obviously having big emotions about these things, don't wait on it. We want to make sure that you communicate with the school. So again, talk to the teacher, talk to an administrator, talk to the front office staff, talk to us as counselors. Don't just sit with things. Make sure that you are teaching your student that it's important to communicate effectively, and and don't take matters into your own hands. We definitely don't want any parent waiting for things to get really bad and then them taking it upon themselves to try to handle things. You just want to make sure that that communication between home and school is happening and right away.
Teresa would like to know, why is there a zero tolerance policy for weapons, but not a zero tolerance policy for sexually harassing behaviors like pantsing a student? And she says it's the last time she's asking for clarification.
There are different from ed code. There are different suspensions and expulsions and all of those different factors that definitely play into if we're talking about consequences. Without knowing specifics, I don't have a specific answer, but I'm happy to help facilitate the conversation with your campus or with myself that could talk through the situation. But again, each of those, there is ed code that we do use for suspensions and expulsions. I know you had referenced that previously. And those, fall into different categories from there.
And can I add, also, I think it's important, parents, that you understand our role as a counselor at the school level. We're here to support your student, right, on a social emotional level. So as far as consequences and investigation, that like Mrs. Taggart just mentioned, speaking to the teacher and to an administrator, and we will be there if needed. You can always request a check-in by us, a conversation with your student, just to see how they're doing, if it's affecting them at school.
I have a good question here. My daughter is in first grade and has not experienced bullying yet, but from your experience, what grade levels do the signs of bullying usually start? Somebody want to jump on this, or I'm going to call one of you?
I think we were having this discussion earlier regarding, I think that's why we're targeting fourth grade with the class lessons and educating our students on bullying. We see a lot of it as they're getting older, right? 9, 10, 11-year-olds, just that type of behavior for some reason starts to elevate or be more present on our campuses. So that's why we have been, jumping into classrooms for fourth grade throughout the 18 elementaries to educate our fourth graders, with a lot of the lingo and how to recognize what it is. And again, the reporting, right? That's the key piece. They, having students encouraging them that they can come talk to us. And like Mr. Calgano mentioned, some of these pieces do take a while to, the investigation takes a while. And, a lot of times parents and our students, want answers right away, but, give us some time to investigate, to talk to both parties. Again, I think that's the age that I've been seeing on my campuses, the 4th and 5th graders. I don't know if anyone wants to add.
I
Well,
was just
go ahead, Caitlin.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I can't really say when it starts. I know the older grades, maybe we tend to see it more, but your child might never experience that. And that's something I want to make a point is that they might never experience bullying, but I think throughout our lives, everyone experiences things that were mean or conflicts. And so we really want to equip every student with the skills to manage conflict or bullying if it comes up. So I think that's the best way to approach it is, what tools can I give my child to handle situations, whether it's bullying or somebody says a mean thing, or they have some big feelings, some big emotions about something that's happening. Because really, how we handle it, and, we might experience, of course, we're all going to experience hardships, but how we handle it and how we come out of that and how we are resilient really makes a big difference. So I think that's a part to focus on with your student.
We have time for maybe one more question if somebody wants to type one in there. And otherwise, okay, I got a couple.
I just want to highlight, I want to go back to what Caitlin said and highlight what Kelly had said earlier is the fourth grade is not the only lessons that are happening. And so when we talk about kindergarten and first grade, we talk about size of the problem. We talk about kind words, and we talk about how what you're saying impacts your friend. And so all of these things, even starting with our littles, is helping to build that community, helping to empower, as Caitlin said, to provide strategies and tools. And I think that's important to note because not only are they going to, as Caitlin said, maybe more of a conflict with a friend, and we want to empower them with really those conflict resolution skills. And those are the same things you can role play at home. My friend says, and this is common in our littles, my friend says they don't want to be my friend anymore. So talking through, what does that look like for them? Or my friend called me a mean name. What does that look like? How can you address that with your friend? And really empowering them, not only in a bullying situation, but in any of those conflict situations. Here are some words you can use. We always say, use your words. And we want to be able to give them those words. As I think Caitlin might have said, is like a drill. The more you practice it, the more second nature it becomes, even for maybe our more reserved or shy students.
And I would encourage, kids to report as soon as they feel something isn't right. I think what happens sometimes is that they wait and things don't improve, and then they get the details get kind of cloudy over time. But being able to tell us as soon as possible something doesn't feel right or they're concerned about it gives us the opportunity to address it and provide them with some tools right away.
There was something that I wanted to bring up, and I answered it directly, but this lady's child was bullied in kindergarten, and she went directly to the other child's mother by phone and talked to her. In this case, it worked for her, but in general, you never know how defensive the other parent is going to be. And that's why you have school staff that can kind of step in and help negotiate that, so you don't have to do that. One parent calling another parent will cause an awful lot of defensive emotions. You want to protect your baby, even if your baby was in the wrong. And you don't know what kind of response you're going to get from the parent, even if that person is somebody that you feel close to or feel trusted. So when I answered her, I said, you lucked out, but that may not always be the case. You guys have any other thoughts on that?
I
Yeah,
think that's great that
yeah.
it worked out, though, that, it was a positive experience for two parents to communicate.
Yeah, I think what you said, Jake, was perfect. Yeah, we don't recommend handling it outside of the school if especially if you don't know the parent that well. So I think it'd be best to contact the teacher, contact the school.
As well, the school needs to know if there's a serious situation, and if you're handling it, by yourself, then they don't necessarily have the information, and that information is really valuable to make sure that all the kids continue to be safe and behaving appropriately. So, let's see, we had one more. who is the contact for junior high concerns? You have counselors at all of our schools, including our middle schools. So you would reach out to either the middle school principal or your middle school counselors. That information is on every school's website, and you can always just call the office and ask. Generally, the counselors are sorted by the child's last name, but again, you can just call the office and they'll be able to give you that information. Okay. I think we've got everything. Anybody had any final things they wanted to say or share?
The last thing that we wanted to just put up there on the screen that the parents see now is, just in case you missed it at the beginning, this is your counseling team and our schools are listed. So if you need to reach out to your child's counselor, take a screenshot. This will be posted later online so that you know who the counselor is. If you have not yet met us and you need some support, reach out to us at any time.
Right. Well, I want to thank you all for participating. I want to thank all of our amazing counselors and principals and Erin for being here. And of course, Yvonne and Betsy, our interpreters tonight. Again, this will be on our website by next week, along with the slide decks for both the English and Spanish versions. And again, we thank you. We're here to help you. We value your partnership and we want to help take care of your students. So having you be here to learn more about this is invaluable for all of us. I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.